You've found nightfall murmurs. When day fades into silence, the world begins to whisper. Some stories come as murmurs, some as warnings, but they all come at night. Don't be afraid to listen, but never listen alone. Home renovation, I discover, breeds its own peculiar strain of madness. Here I sit, sentinel in my own kitchen at the ungodly hour of 3, clutching a Louisville Slugger, listening to the impossible tread ascending the staircase once more. Night after night, louder, sharper, drawing inexorably nearer. And now the whispers have bloomed into voices. It began innocuously enough 3 weeks past, when Clara and I plunged into the long-deferred resurrection of our 1940s colonial. The children, Finn and Maya, were outgrowing their spaces. The house itself sighed for renewal. Our savings earmarked for gutting the second story, plumbing in a new bath, transforming the dusty attic into a proper haven for Finn. A straightforward undertaking, or so we believed. The initial week unfolded predictably, demolition crews reducing the upstairs to skeletal studs and lath. A fine film of pulverized history coated everything. Plastic sheeting hung like spectral shrouds, the familiar ballet of construction chaos. We decamped, the children relegated to the finished basement. Finn on the pull-out sofa, Maya adrift on an air mattress. Clara and I claimed the ground floor guest room. Then arrived the first tremor. 2 a.m., a mundane call of nature. Slipping past the stairwell, I caught it, the unmistakable percussion of footfalls on bare wood. Measured, deliberate. Creak, creak, creak. Ascending, my immediate thought, Finn, defying our explicit warnings about the hazardous upstairs. I stabbed the switch, flooding the stairwell with harsh light, poised to reprimand. Silence slammed down. Halfway up the treads I crept, scanning each riser. Nothing but naked timber, drifts of sawdust, and the ghostly flutter of plastic stirred by the heating vent's breath. A swift check downstairs confirmed it. Both children deeply asleep. Clara, too, lost to the world in our temporary chamber. An old house groaning under duress, I told myself. Structures settle, timbers complain, especially amidst the upheaval of renovation. I am Leo, an accountant. I trade in verifiable figures, tangible realities. Logic dictated a rational cause. The following night, the haunting returned. 3 a.m. this time. The slow rhythmic climb. But now a new element. Whispers. A low susurrus like wind through dead leaves. Multiple sources, indecipherable, yet carrying the distinct cadence of hushed colloquy. Again the light banished them. Again the household slept undisturbed. I procured a notebook, began chronicling times, phenomena. Night 3, the phantom ascent reached the 8th step before ceasing. Night 4, the 10th. The voices swelled incrementally, still maddeningly indistinct, akin to eavesdropping through dense plaster, the rise and fall audible, the substance elusive. By week's end, sleep had become a forgotten luxury, parceled out in ragged, hour-long increments. I mounted a motion-activated camera facing the stairs. Its digital eye captured nothing beyond airborne motes and the swaying plastic shrouds. Yet the footsteps persisted, scaling ever higher, the clandestine conversation sharpening at the edges. Clara observed my deterioration. "Leo, you look haunted," she remarked over morning coffee. "Is the budget weighing on you?" Confession felt impossible. How to articulate this siege to my pragmatic wife? That spectral climbers stole my rest, that I spent the darkest hours armed against unseen intruders. I mumbled about work pressures, tripled my caffeine intake. Each night I took up my vigil in the kitchen, waiting. The footsteps never failed their appointment. Week 2 saw them conquer the summit. The voices, now startlingly proximate, yielded fragments. "Careful now." "Almost." "Help them." Utterly mundane directives, delivered with neighborly concern, like strangers navigating a darkened passage. Their very normality amplified the horror. Driven, I delved into the property's lineage. County archives offered only prosaic transactions. Built 1947, the Athertons. Sold 1963, the Baldwins. Then the Cartwrights in 85. We acquired it from the Cartwright estate in 2019. No recorded tragedies, no whiff of scandal. Just an ordinary dwelling passed between unremarkable families. Still, the ascent continued, the colloquy persisted, and now the light no longer guaranteed silence. Last night marked a new threshold of dread. My usual kitchen post, 3:17 a.m., logged meticulously. The first riser groaned, then the second. The familiar susurrus commenced. "Mind the riser." "Nails proud there." "Your hand." My knuckles bleached on the bat handle, pulse a frantic drum against my eardrums. The clarity was unnerving. Men, women, the young, the old, a chorus of commonplace solicitude. The 8th step sounded, then a shift. A new voice, thin, childish. "Why must we go up?" An older tone answered, gentle yet unyielding. "You know why, we all must, only a few more." That's when the chill descended, palpable, defying the thermostat's steady 70 circudegree. My own breath plumed white in the dim kitchen air. The steps reached 12, 13, 14. Another voice, frail with age, quavering. "I cannot, not again. You must, we all do, every night until..." The sentence dissolved unfinished. They reached the landing, and this time, the climb didn't cease. I heard them traversing the 2nd floor, multiple sets of feet shuffling through the debris field of construction. Instinct propelled me forward before conscious thought could intervene. Flashlight beam slicing ahead. Bat raised, I charged the stairs. Light splashed across plastic, warping shadows into grotesque shapes. The footfalls moved unmistakably toward the attic access, scuffing across exposed plywood. And then I saw them, footprints materializing in the fine layer of dust, not simultaneously but sequentially, tracing an invisible procession, diminutive prints beside heavy work boot impressions, the slender outline of women's shoes, all converging on the attic stairs. I followed. What choice remained? 2 weeks I'd listened. Understanding felt imperative now. The attic stairs were merely a temporary ladder angled into the opening. The footprints marched directly to its base, then halted. The voices enveloped me, immediate, as if the speakers stood inches away. "Time now. Don't fear. We all must go. Every night until it is finished. Until they are all up." The ladder creaked, a sharp protest. Not under my weight, for I remained frozen below. Something unseen was ascending, dust motes stirring on the rungs beneath intangible pressure. That's when the dam of my resolve broke. I fled. Down the stairs, back to the kitchen's dubious sanctuary, back to this notebook, my script trembling. It is 4:45 a.m. The nocturnal procession has concluded for now, but their return is a certainty. They always return, and they're moving beyond the stairs, infiltrating the house, drawing closer. Clara's concern deepens daily. The contractors murmur about my pallor. Finn complains of unsettling noises that fracture his sleep. Even Maya, typically impervious, whispers of hearing people talking in the night. I should unburden myself to Clara, present the notebook, this futile catalogue of the impossible. Show her the video clips of dust dancing to unseen choreography. But the fear of disbelief paralyzes me. What if she deems me broken by stress? What if she gathers the children and flees, leaving me alone with this? So I endure the nightly vigil, listening to the climb, the voices honing their clarity, feeling the temperature plunge and the dust stir, sensing a presence that has shed its confinement to the stairs. The renovation nears its end. Another week, perhaps 2, the foreman estimates. I suspect our time is shorter. The voices declared it, every night until it's done. Done how? Their climb completed? Their objective achieved? Or until they claim what or whom they desire? Last night I heard Maya cry out from the basement. Not fear, not nightmare, but words tumbling from sleep. I don't want to climb. Please don't make me climb the stairs. Finn has sleepwalked thrice this week. I find him standing at the foot of the stairs, gazing into the upper darkness, remembering nothing upon waking. And Clara. Yesterday morning, I found her transfixed before the attic ladder, coffee cooling forgotten in her grasp. When questioned, she murmured, "Strange. I thought I heard someone calling me, asking me to come up." So I sit, armed with wood, light, and ink-filled pages that offer no defense. The new floors gleam. Fresh paint seals the walls. Soon, normalcy beckons us upstairs. Yet I know the footsteps will echo, the voices will call, and one imminent night, they won't halt at the landing. They will proceed, beckon, insist that we join their ascent into whatever void awaits above. I hear them now, the first step, the second. The whispers commence their nightly ritual, but tonight a variance. Tonight they articulate a name, my name. Flight screams through my veins, urging me to snatch my family, abandon this house to its spectral occupants. Yet my limbs remain leaden, because beneath the terror, the exhaustion, the rational mind shrieking denial, resides a treacherous, quiet curiosity. A part of me needs to answer, needs to witness the destination, understands with chilling certainty that we are all destined, eventually, to climb those stairs. The footsteps draw closer, the voices sharpen, and tonight, I fear, I will finally discover where they lead. The deadbolt clicked home with satisfying finality. Every morning, Elias performed this ritual. Lock, check, jiggle the handle. Not paranoia, not yet, but a low hum of dissonance had begun to thrum beneath the surface of his days in this temporary dwelling. Something felt persistently, subtly, wrong. Each return home presented a fresh anomaly, minute shifts in the static landscape of the furnished flat. Day 1, a dining chair canted at an angle previously unoccupied. Day 2, the low profile of the coffee table nudged perhaps an inch, perhaps 2, from its designated spot. Day 3, a cupboard gaping slightly ajar, a silent O against the smooth kitchen fascia he distinctly recalled securing. An unsettling conviction grew. He wasn't the sole occupant. He'd taken the place while his own apartment underwent a messy, protracted renovation. 8 weeks, the contractor estimated. This furnished studio, conveniently close, offered the basics. A compact living area melting into a kitchenette, a bedroom just large enough for its purpose, a sliver of a bathroom. Standard issue furniture populated the space, a modest sofa, the aforementioned coffee table, a solitary armchair, a small dining set for 2, a bed, a wardrobe, impersonal, functional. It had seemed perfectly adequate during the initial viewing, nestled within a building boasting a sleek lobby, a staffed front desk, and corridors lined with identical, anonymous doors. His unit, 6 floors up, sat near the elevator's hum. The first week passed in a blur of work and fatigue, the flat merely a place to collapse. Nothing registered as odd. Then, one Friday evening, sinking into the sofa's embrace, TV flickering to life, his gaze snagged on the armchair. It loitered strangely near the center of the room, away from its post by the window. He was certain it hadn't been there. The cleaner? The rental agreement mentioned weekly housekeeping. He made a mental note to verify the schedule, grasping at the mundane explanation. Yet the wrongness lingered. He rose, nudged the chair back into alignment with the window frame, and forced the incident from his mind. Saturday morning brought coffee preparation and the discovery of the kitchen cabinet above the sink hanging open. He meticulously closed cupboards. It was habit, but perhaps he'd slipped up. He clicked it shut, brewed his coffee, moved on. That night, returning late, exhaustion weighing him down, he stopped dead just inside the doorway. The coffee table had migrated significantly, now huddled about 2 feet closer to the sofa. Tuesday was clean-in day. This was Saturday. No extra service had been requested. His pulse hammered a frantic rhythm against his ribs. A leaden weight settled in his gut. He circled the table, crouched, peered beneath. Nothing. Sinking onto the sofa, the television's glow offered little comfort. He kept glancing from the misplaced table to the securely locked door, wrestling with the unsettling possibility of his own unconscious actions. Sleep came eventually, but it was shallow, disturbed. Monday saw him at the front desk, inquiring if anyone had accessed his unit over the weekend. The receptionist, polite but detached, consulted the digital logs. Only his key fob registered. Housekeeping, she confirmed, did not work Saturdays. A chill, distinct and unwelcome, traced its way down his spine. He managed a tight smile, ascended to the 6th floor. Inside the flat, an initial sweep revealed nothing amiss. He retrieved a water bottle from the fridge, turned, and froze. The bedroom door stood open. He always closed it. Bottle still clutched in his hand, he stared into the dim space. Unmade bed, closed wardrobe, drawn curtains. Nothing overtly sinister, yet the carefully constructed dam of his composure felt another fissure. He could have left it open, he reasoned weakly, but the anxiety tightening in his chest screamed otherwise. Later that same evening, emerging damp from the shower, pulling on a shirt in the bedroom, a faint sound reached him from the living area. A distinct click, like the television powering on. Heart leaping, shirt half buttoned, he hurried out. The TV remained dark, but the lamp beside the sofa, the one he never used, cast a warm, illicit pool of light onto the floor. He distinctly remembered leaving it off. The thumping in his ears grew deafening. He crossed the room, switched off the offending lamp, his eyes darting around. Windows secure. Front door bolted. A frantic check of the closet, under the sofa, yielded nothing. He illuminated every corner of the flat, marching through the rooms like a sentinel, before collapsing onto the sofa, tremors running down his arms. His thoughts raced, a frantic scramble for rational explanations. Had he flicked the switch accidentally? Deep down, the logic felt flimsy, inadequate. The second week, Elias initiated countermeasures. Each morning, he balanced a minuscule sliver of paper high in the jamb of his front door, positioned to fall at the slightest inward swing. One evening, upon returning, the paper lay accusingly on the welcome mat. He contacted the receptionist again. Again, the insistence, no recorded entry. The hallway camera, it only covered the elevator bank, not his specific door. Perhaps the paper simply fell, she suggested mildly. Possible, yes, but suspicion festered, whispering of alternative entries, hidden accesses he couldn't perceive within the flat's bland geometry. The space began to feel suffocating. Sleep became a luxury. Work suffered. Concentration fractured, forcing him to double-check everything. He pictured unseen movements in his absence, a phantom rearranging his temporary life. Sometimes, chillingly, he wondered if the presence remained even when he was home. One afternoon, impulsively, he decided on an unscheduled return. Leaving work at noon under the guise of errands, he reached the building by 12:30. The sixth-floor corridor stretched silent. Pressing his ear to his door yielded nothing. He unlocked it, eased it open, stepped inside. A soft creak echoed from the short hallway leading towards the bedroom and bathroom, the unmistakable sound of a door being stealthily closed. His throat constricted. He surged down the hall. The bathroom door was slightly ajar. He shoved it wide, flicked on the light. Empty. Shower, toilet, sink, gleaming innocuously. The bedroom door, too, stood open. He burst in, eyes scanning, yanking open the wardrobe, pulling out drawers. Vacant. A feverish heat bloomed in his head. No forced entry, nothing stolen. Yet the sound. Had it been old hinges protesting, or was his grasp on reality loosening? That night, he brought a small folding chair back from his office. He positioned it in the hallway outside the bedroom, facing the bathroom door. Then, cloaked in darkness, phone clutched like a talisman, he waited. Midnight crawled past. Drowsiness tugged at him, his neck aching from the awkward posture against the wall. Around 1 a.m., a soft thump emanated from the living room, the dull impact of something colliding with furniture. He shot upright, phone flashlight blazing, and rushed towards the sound. Nothing. Sofa undisturbed, table stationary, but the lamp glowed again. He hadn't touched it. His skin prickled with a cold dread. Another circuit of the flat, checking, searching. Returning to his hallway post, he noticed the bedroom door was now half closed. Adrenaline surged, heart hammering against his ribs. He shoved the door open, bathing the room in phone light. Still empty. Sweat beaded on his temples. Sleep was impossible now. The third week became an exercise in endurance. His jumpiness at work became noticeable. He attempted to record the flat using his phone propped on a shelf, but the battery invariably died before revealing anything. A dedicated security camera was financially out of reach, his funds diverted to the renovation. Breaking the lease beckoned, yet the practical need for shelter remained. Besides, a stubborn refusal to flee had taken root. He needed answers, needed to know if he was succumbing to delusion, or if someone, something, was orchestrating this unsettling game. One afternoon, waiting for the elevator, he heard it. Distinct movement from within his flat. Footsteps. Heart pounding, he fumbled with his key, turning the lock as silently as possible, hoping to finally confront the source. The moment the door swung inward, a faint squeak sounded from the bedroom. He sprinted towards it. The door was shut tight. He seized the handle, wrenched it open. Empty. Wardrobe check, under the bed inspection, drawers rifled, bedside table examined. Nothing. His hands trembled, a dull ache blooming in his chest from the relentless tension. The bathroom yielded the same result. Back in the living room, everything seemed normal, except the armchair. It had pivoted again, now facing the sofa directly. He had no memory of leaving it that way. Another visit to the front desk. He reiterated his concerns, the inexplicable repositioning of objects. Could a previous tenant retain a key? Impossible, the receptionist insisted, though she promised to consult management. Locks recently changed, no unauthorized access logged. She regarded him with a look that hovered between pity and disbelief. He walked away, the bitter taste of isolation sharp in his mouth. That night, he deployed a new strategy: deliberate placement. Shoes arranged just so against the wall near the entrance. A pen laid perfectly parallel to the edge of the TV stand. Kitchen chairs angled with geometric precision. He documented the setup with phone pictures. Then he left, nursing a drink at a nearby bar, killing 2 hours before returning around 9 p.m. Comparison confirmed his fears. One shoe nudged inches from its partner. The pen lay askew, a knot twisted tight in his stomach. No sound, no sign of intrusion. He searched again, his voice echoing unnaturally in the stillness as he called out, "Whoever you are, I know you're here!" Silence answered. Frustration and fear burned hot beneath his skin. The 4th week dawned, heavy with exhaustion. His boss, noticing his frayed state, mandated a day off. Ilias remained barricaded in the flat, refusing to leave even for essentials. The day passed in watchful silence until late afternoon. He went to the bathroom, leaving the door open behind him. While washing his hands, a soft click sounded, seemingly from the bedroom vicinity. Water dripping from his fingers, he spun around, rushed out. He saw it, the bedroom door slowly, silently closing. He lunged, yanked it open, stepped inside. Empty. Again. The wardrobe stood impassive, door shut. He approached it, hand hovering over the handle, breath held captive in his chest. He pulled it open decisively. Clothes hung undisturbed. Nothing lurked behind them. He pulled out the shallow dresser drawers, no conceivable hiding place. Sweat slicked his skin, his breathing ragged. He felt ensnared in a grotesque game of hide and seek with an invisible opponent. The remainder of the day was spent in agitated pacing, obsessive checking of doors, windows, potential crevices, all secure. Night fell. He dragged a dining chair to the bedroom door, wedging its back firmly beneath the handle. He double-checked the window lock, plugged in his phone, turned off the lights, leaving only the faint urban glow filtering through the curtains. He lay rigid, attuned to every creak and groan of the building. sleep teased, then retreated. Around 3 a.m., just as exhaustion threatened to claim him, a dull thud startled him fully awake. He bolted upright, heart seizing. Flipping on the bedside lamp revealed the chair undisturbed, the door secure. He crept towards it, pressed his ear against the wood. Faint, unmistakable footsteps whispered from the living room. He stood frozen, trapped between the urge to confront and the certainty of failure. Opening the door meant they would vanish, melt away as always. But remaining passive felt unbearable. Minutes stretched, thick with indecision and the frantic pulse in his ears. Finally, he slid the chair aside, eased the door open. Darkness greeted him. He flooded the living room with light, scrutinizing every corner. Serene, empty, except the coffee table. Shifted again. Only an inch, maybe less, but undeniably moved. A raw, ragged sound threatened to tear from his throat. This wasn't stress, wasn't imagination. He had to get out. The following morning found him at his apartment's construction site, pleading with the contractor for expediency, offering extra payment for haste. An accelerated timeline, 1 more week, was promised. Back in the haunted flat, he began packing, a sense of urgent retreat propelling him. He slept with the lights blazing now, ignoring the occasional faint sounds from beyond the bedroom door. Investigation felt futile. Escape was the only goal. On his final morning, suitcases waited by the entrance. He took a last, slow tour through the rooms he'd briefly, unwillingly inhabited. The armchair gazed blankly at a wall. The kitchen cabinet hung slightly open. He closed it gently, a final, futile act of order, and walked out. He never discovered the truth of that flat. If a person shared his space, exploiting some hidden access or duplicated key, or if the explanation lay elsewhere in exhaustion or suggestion. The uncertainty remained. His own apartment, blessedly solid and finished the next week, became his sanctuary. He never spoke of the experience, yet sometimes the memory surfaces, that pervasive sense of being watched, the phantom rearrangements. Even now, in the safety of his own home, he checks the locks twice. A sudden creak in the hallway can still send a jolt of adrenaline through him. The flat and its unseen cohabitant remain lodged deep within, a chilling reminder of how easily the familiar can become terrifyingly alien. He hopes it remains only a memory. A metallic shriek, raw and tearing, ripped through the subterranean gloom as the train carriage juddered violently, grinding to an unforeseen standstill. Above, the fluorescent tubes stuttered, painting the sparse occupants in pulses of sickly, unreliable light, shadows deepening and receding like phantom breaths. Scanning the near void of the car, Ilara Vance felt a tremor distinct from the train's abrupt halt, a glacial prickle tracing her spine. He was here, the silent observer, the man whose presence had haunted her commutes for a week, occupied a seat down the aisle. His obsidian gaze found hers, unwavering, and the sudden immobility of their steel capsule, deep beneath the city's skin, became a suffocating trap. Ilara Vance. That name, until 7 days past, signified little more than another anonymous soul adrift in the city's relentless current. A graphic designer, 28, transplanted from the quiet plains of the heartland to chase the luminous phantoms of ambition in New York. Now rooted to the worn vinyl seat, A chilling question surfaced. Would those very ambitions culminate here, in this stalled, flickering purgatory? The unsettling awareness began the previous Tuesday. Engulfed in the usual morning crush, her thoughts preoccupied with looming project deadlines, she descended the station steps into the daylight. A prickling sensation, the urbanite's sixth sense for surveillance, had made her turn. Across the platform, a figure watched her, his attention absolute. His features blended into a tapestry of urban neutrality. Medium build, hair the color of asphalt, clothes devoid of distinction. Yet the sheer fixity of his stare sent an invasive chill crawling beneath her skin. She dismissed it then, another fragment of the city's inherent strangeness. But the following dawn revealed him again, and the next, and the one after, a constant fixture on her train, his gaze a silent weight in her periphery. She altered her departure times, experimented with different routes, but futility dogged her efforts. He materialized regardless, an inescapable shadow. Outside the labyrinthine subway system, he remained unseen, yet each descent into a station sent her pulse hammering, a frantic search commencing until his familiar, unsettling form was located. A perverse game of cat and mouse played out in the echoing tunnels, one where her evasion proved perpetually futile. The notion of involving the authorities had flickered, only to be extinguished by its own absurdity. What accusation could she possibly level? A man shared her public transit route. He looked at her. No tangible transgression existed, only an insidious dread coiling tighter within her chest with every passing day. Which led inexorably to this night. Lingering late at the office, a deliberate tactic to sidestep her usual train had proven fruitless. Entering the sparsely populated carriage, her stomach plummeted. There he sat, placid, radiating an unnerving patience, as if awaiting her specific arrival. She chose a seat diagonally opposite, maximum distance procured, her fingers clenching her phone, emergency services pre-selected. 2 stops crawled by in a silence stretched taut as wire, before the brakes screamed their protest. Now, amidst the chiaroscuro cast by the failing lights, she watched, paralyzed, as he rose. His motion possessed an unsettling fluidity, a predatory grace, as he closed the distance between them. The carriage's other few inhabitants remained islands of oblivion, lost in the glow of screens, or slumped in uneasy slumber against the vibrating windows. "Ilara," he murmured, the softness of his voice a jarring counterpoint to the fear constricting her throat. "I believe a conversation is overdue." Her breath hitched, her name, uttered by him. The syllables hung in the dead air, an impossible intimacy. "Who are you?" The words emerged as a dry rasp, her thumb trembling millimeters above the call icon. "What is it you want?" A smile touched his lips, but failed to ignite his eyes. They remained glacial, analytical. "My identity is inconsequential," he countered, his voice a low murmur against the carriage's hum. "What matters is your identity, Ilara. More precisely, the identity you are destined to assume." A strangled, hysterical sound threatened to escape her. This felt unreal, a stress-induced nightmare poised to dissolve at any moment. Yet the cold, unyielding metal beneath her, the faint, acrid tang of tunnel air, the palpable presence of the man before her, It possessed an undeniable, terrifying solidity. "I don't understand," she whispered, hating the tremor that betrayed her fear. He settled onto the seat facing hers, leaning in, elbows resting on his knees. "Naturally, not yet, but comprehension will come. You see, Alara, you possess a significance you haven't begun to grasp." She shook her head, a maelstrom of confusion and terror warring within. "I'm not significant. I'm no one. Please just leave me alone." His gaze hardened fractionally. "That decision isn't yours to make, Ilara. You haven't been unnoticed. Our observation spans considerable time. Your potential is known to us." "Our?" Her eyes darted around the car, a sudden, chilling certainty seizing her. The other passengers, complicit actors in this bizarre theater. But their disinterest remained absolute, hermetically sealed. "Indeed, our," he affirmed. "We constitute a presence far vaster than you can currently conceive, Ilara. Millennia have seen us subtly steer human destiny from the periphery. Now your time has arrived. Your integration awaits." Abruptly, she surged to her feet, shedding any concern for appearing unhinged. "I have no idea what you're talking about, nor do I wish to. Stay away from me." She moved to sidestep him, prepared to hammer on the driver's compartment door, to scream, to do anything. As she pushed forward, his hand shot out, encircling her wrist with a strength that felt utterly non-human. "There is no refusal, Elara," he stated, his tone still measured but underscored by an inflexible resolve. "The metamorphosis is already in motion. Surely you felt the alterations, the subtle shifts within?" She struggled against his grip, a vice of living steel. "What alterations? Let go!" Even as the denial sprang forth, recognition dawned. The persistent headaches that had plagued her all week, the vivid, unsettling dreams, those fleeting instants where the fragmented thoughts of strangers seemed to bleed into her own awareness. "Precisely," he confirmed, his knowing unnervingly akin to mind-reading. Perhaps it was. "Your innate faculties are awakening, but they require cultivation, discipline. Without our guidance, control will inevitably fracture. Believe me, the consequences are something you wish to avoid." The carriage lights flickered once more, then plunged into absolute darkness. In the sudden void, the very atmosphere seemed to shift, crackling with an unseen energy, becoming dense and electric. And then, perception fractured, reformed. She saw. A deluge of consciousness surged into her. The fragmented anxieties, fleeting desires, and weary indifference of the others. The intricate network of the train's mechanics unfolded before her inner eye, a luminous three-dimensional schematic. And the man gripping her wrist, she perceived his true essence, not human, not remotely. Recoiling violently, she tore her arm free with a surge of strength she hadn't known she possessed. "What are you?" she gasped into the oppressive blackness. In the dark, his eyes began to emit a soft, internal luminescence. "We are the Sentinels," his voice resonated, deeper now in the gloom. "Custodians of humankind's unfolding trajectory. And you, Ilara, represent its imminent leap." With a violent lurch, the train shuddered back into motion. The lights sputtered, flared, restoring the mundane world as if dispelling an enchantment. The other passengers stirred, muttering complaints about the delay. The man, the sentinel, rose smoothly. "This is merely the beginning, Ilara. Expect contact." Then, impossibly, he ceased to be there. Not departed, but absent, dissolving into the ambient space between one heartbeat and the next. The train resumed its rhythmic clatter, pulling into the next station. Ilara stumbled onto the platform, gulping the stale subterranean air as if it were crisp mountain oxygen. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. With trembling fingers, she retrieved it. A message illuminated the screen. Source anonymous. "The veil is lifted, Ilara. Your tutelage commences dawn." She stared at the glowing text, terror and a strange, nascent excitement warring within her veins. One instinct screamed for flight, for denial, for a desperate scramble back to the familiar contours of her old reality. Yet a stronger, deeper current, something long dormant now stirring awake, resonated with curiosity, even anticipation. Ascending the stairs to the street, the city itself felt altered, sharper, intensely vibrant. She could almost feel the collective thrum of millions of lives, a complex symphony of thought and emotion previously imperceptible. Gazing upwards at the sliver of night sky visible between the towering canyons of steel and glass, obscured by the city's perpetual luminous haze, she knew. Somewhere beyond sight, the sentinels observed, waited. A choice lay before her. Could she flee this precipice, scramble back towards the mundane, or step forward into the luminous unknown this encounter promised? Walking the final blocks home, her mind a whirlwind of impossible possibilities, Ilara understood the choice was already an echo. There could be no return to the woman she had been mere hours ago. For better or worse, a new trajectory was set. And somewhere, concealed within the city's intricate shadows, she sensed the sentinels, their unseen presence marked by an unnerving, patient smile. There was a time the nocturnal road whispered peace to me, the tarmac ribbons spooling under vacant heavens, a solace found in solitude and shadow. That solace curdled. Now sundown clamps a dread upon me, a reason to shun the driver's seat, because the rearview mirror has become a portal reflecting terrors I cannot fathom. It began subtly, an amorphous stain against the upholstery behind me, but the stain bled, expanded. I never see it when I twist around, you understand? No voice intrudes, no whisper breaks the engine's drone, yet its gaze is a physical weight. I despise it. My name is Elias. My profession chains me to the asphalt. I represent an industrial supply firm, navigating a territory that sprawls across state lines, condemning me to endless weeks on highways and forgotten byways. My vehicle, a pragmatic sedan chosen for its endurance and economy, was once my vessel of liberation. Until a few months passed, I relished the freedom, pushing through the deepening night fueled by lukewarm coffee and the crackle of distant radio stations. The open road was a promise. Apprehension was a foreign concept, until the silhouette first materialized in the silvered glass. I was traversing a desolate artery of highway, swallowed by an expanse of rural nowhere. The dashboard clock glowed 10:47 p.m. The detail is seared into me, captured in the instant before my gaze snagged on the anomaly. The cabin was steeped in darkness, save for the faint luminescence of the instrument panel and the fleeting sweep of opposing headlights. Fatigue hummed at the edges of my awareness, but I wasn't near exhaustion. Music murmured from the speakers. My thoughts were charting the next day's course when my eyes, unbidden, flicked to the rear view. A motion registered in the back seat. Initially, I dismissed it, the fleeting ghost of passing headlights perhaps. A blink, a refocus. But no, an obsidian contour lingered, the distinct shape of shoulders and a head, faint yet undeniably present, occupying the center seat. A glacial wave washed through me, the fine hairs on my forearms lifted in unison. My gut clenched into a knot. Logic warred with instinct as I spun around. Had someone slipped in unseen at my last stop? Absurd. The seat was vacant. I snapped my eyes back to the mirror. The shape had vanished. I pressed onward, chanting internal litanies about tricks of light, illusions born of weariness. I cranked the radio volume, forcing my concentration onto the hypnotizing lane markers. Yet every involuntary glance toward the mirror tightened a spring within me. Anticipation coiled, expecting the form's return. Nothing further disturbed the journey that night. I arrived home near 2, parked the car, and willed the incident into oblivion. It refused to stay buried, lodging itself like a splinter in the back of my mind. 2 days hence, duty called me to another town. A late-running meeting bled into snarled evening traffic. By the time the highway finally unfurled before me, darkness had fully descended, past 9 o'clock. The memory of the strange sighting resurfaced, unwelcome. I fought it down, attributing it to excessive hours, ocular phantoms. But roughly an hour into the drive, a chilling familiarity coalesced in the mirror. This time, the outline possessed a sharper definition. It resembled a figure leaning forward, intruding into the space between the front seats. Panic surged, hot and suffocating. My knuckles whitened on the steering wheel as I fixed my stare rigidly ahead. My heart hammered against my ribs. My breath grew shallow, ragged. "Look back," a voice commanded within me. Gripping the wheel tighter still, I wrenched my head around. Emptiness greeted me. My gaze darted back to the mirror, still clear. A shaky exhale escaped me, tinged with a foolish relief. I consciously relaxed my shoulders, attempting a brittle laugh. It was then, from the periphery of my vision, that movement shimmered in the mirror once more. A reflexive jerk of my head revealed nothing. This tormenting dance persisted for the remainder of the drive. Fleeting glimpses caught only when my attention wasn't directly on the mirror. I reached home taut with anxiety, trembling, collapsing into bed, only to find sleep elusive and fraught. The following day left me skittish. Confiding in a friend, I mentioned seeing peculiar reflections during my drives. He offered a jesting diagnosis, an overactive imagination. I clung to that possibility, but the nocturnal visitations continued, intensifying over the ensuing weeks. They became almost expected. Every night, drive carried the potential for that presence. Sometimes the mirror held only the faintest smudge. Other times, it loomed closer, leaning forward insistently. Occasionally, the mirror showed nothing, yet an oppressive weight settled in the cabin, an unseen passenger whose silence felt expectant, as if poised on the verge of speech. One night found me refueling around 11 at a nearly deserted gas station. After paying, I climbed back into the car, pausing for a deliberate moment to scrutinize the back seat under the stark fluorescent glare. Empty. The upholstery clean. No stray objects. I resolved to drive home calmly, fearlessly. The instant the engine turned over and I merged onto the road, the sensation returned, palpable as a shift in air pressure. Someone had quietly assumed their place behind me. My scalp prickled. A chill unrelated to the air conditioning traced its way down my spine. My breathing quickened. My eyes kept flicking to the mirror. The silhouette flickered at the edges of perception, sometimes solidifying dead center, as if studying the gap between the headrests. A sudden surge of terror nearly sent me careening off the asphalt. I wrestled the wheel straight. Seeking refuge in silence, I killed the radio, but the quiet amplified everything. Each minor creak of the chassis became a thunderclap. The engine's steady hum seemed menacingly loud. My own respiration sounded harsh, desperate. I tried speaking aloud, a trembling monologue. "Calm down, it's nothing, just keep driving." My voice betrayed me, thin and unsteady. That night, perhaps halfway home, the phenomenon altered. I sensed, rather than saw, movement adjacent to my left shoulder, a subtle displacement of air, like someone leaning intimately close. Nothing registered in my peripheral vision, yet the proximity was undeniable. A soft, almost physical brush against the space beside me. A strangled yelp escaped me as I instinctively jerked the wheel, the tires screaming on the shoulder. Correction came barely in time. My heart pounded violently, a frantic pulse throbbing in my throat. Seconds later, a scent unfurled in the confined air, faint but cloying. Old leather, perhaps, or damp, decaying fabric. It made my stomach roil. Uncertain what else to do, I accelerated, consumed by the singular urge to reach home. Pulling into my driveway felt like surfacing from underwater. I bolted from the car, slamming the door with unnecessary force, my entire frame vibrating. Standing there in the concealing darkness, I stared through the window at the back seat, motionless, silent, empty. I stumbled to my front door, locked it securely, and spent the remainder of the night wide awake on the living room couch, unable to quell the tremors. My palms remained slick with sweat, my eyes darting at every shadow, every settling noise of the house. Was I fracturing? Did I need medical help, succumbing to some stress-induced delusion? Yet, daylight brought a semblance of normalcy. I navigated my workday, engaged with clients, actively suppressing the encroaching thoughts. Until evening approached, then the familiar dread began its slow, cold seep. Another trip loomed later that week. I meticulously planned, aiming for a return before sunset. But meetings inevitably stretched, delays accumulated, and night driving became inescapable once more. That journey was worse. From the outset, the shape haunted the mirror. Initially a mere whisper of darkness, it remained largely static, a passive, shadowed passenger. After some time, however, a distinct rustling intruded, the sound of fabric shifting, originating directly from the back seat. A swift, terrified glance over my shoulder confirmed the visual emptiness, but my skin crawled, and my breath hitched in my chest. I fiddled with the climate controls, seeking a rational explanation in errant air currents. It offered no solace. The rustling persisted, intermittent but undeniable. Then came a quiet tap on the window directly behind my head. just once, I nearly vaulted from my seat. As home drew nearer, the presence seemed to lean forward again, more insistently this time. I felt it, a slight phantom pressure near my left shoulder. My body locked rigid, my eyes burned, forgetting the simple act of blinking. A frantic internal debate raged. Pull over, stop the car. But the narrow, shoulderless road offered no safe harbor. I pressed on, knuckles bleached white on the wheel. The shape remained oppressively close, as if gathering itself to whisper. No words formed, but a faint, sibilant hiss brushed my ear, indistinguishable from the rush of my own breath against the cold glass. A violent shudder racked my body. I parked on the street that night, unable to muster the courage to even open the rear door for inspection. Locking the car hastily, I fled indoors. Television offered no distraction. Every external sound became magnified, sinister. Sleep, when it finally came, was shallow and plagued by restless phantoms. I awoke feeling utterly depleted. I contacted my supervisor, inquiring, tentatively, about minimizing late drives. The answer was unequivocal: impossible. The job demanded travel, often extending beyond daylight hours. I attempted to compensate by starting my days at dawn, striving to conclude business before dusk, but schedules remained unpredictable. Gradually, I developed a nervous habit of monitoring the sky. The sun's descent triggered an immediate clenching in my gut, a familiar surge of panic. Colleagues noticed my tension, inquired about my well-being. Just tired, I'd murmur, unwilling to voice the truth. The sheer absurdity of confessing to a spectral passenger. The sightings became an unwelcome fixture of my nocturnal travels. Nearly every time I drove alone after dark, the shape would manifest, sometimes inert, a passive observer, other times leaning forward, inquisitive. On a few terrifying occasions, I felt that near contact by my ear, that suggestion of breath or a sibilant whisper. Its purpose remained opaque. No clear message, only faint rustlings, the phantom hiss. I took to blasting music, attempting to drown the silence and the sounds within it. I tried driving with all windows down, hoping the roaring wind might dispel the presence. These measures offered only fleeting respite. Turning on the dome, light proved counterproductive, bathing the interior in stark illumination that only heightened my anxious vigil. My eyes glued to the empty back seat, waiting for the shape to defy the light. It never did, preferring shadow and low illumination. One desperate night, I drove with the overhead light blazing the entire way. It made no difference. A glance at the mirror still revealed the persistent outline. During daylight hours, I began meticulously inspecting the car, searching for any rational explanation. A stray object casting an odd reflection, something lodged beneath the seats. Nothing. The upholstery was immaculate, the back free of clutter. An ophthalmologist appointment crossed my mind, yet my vision remained sharp for everything else. This singular, disturbing phenomenon stood alone. Weeks bled into months. The anxiety became a constant companion on late drives, my shoulders perpetually knotted, my palms dampening the moment the sun dipped below the horizon. I started avoiding rest stops, gripped by a primal fear of re-entering the vehicle alone. I compelled myself to continue, but my nerves frayed thin. Sleep offered little restoration. Minor household noises made me jump. The feeling of powerlessness was corrosive. Sometimes, desperation drove me to speak aloud on the road, addressing the silhouette, pleading with it to leave. It offered no response, no permanent departure. Then came a weekend demanding an extended journey, necessitating driving through the entire night to reach a conference by morning. Escape was impossible. I departed around 6 in the evening, hoping to devour as many miles as possible before true darkness fell. Initially, the busy roads provided a buffer. For the first hour or two, nothing unusual occurred, but as traffic inevitably thinned and the sky deepened to impenetrable black, the familiar chill returned. A hesitant glance at the mirror confirmed its presence, faint but definite. My heart rate accelerated. "Pull over," I told myself. "Get coffee, regroup." I took the next exit, the brief stop offering no real comfort. Back on the desolate highway, the shape reappeared instantly. The muscles in my arms and shoulders screamed from the tension of my grip on the wheel. Around midnight, a definitive movement occurred behind me. Not just a feeling, but a subtle shift, as if weight had settled onto the seat. In the mirror, I caught a fleeting impression. The bare outline of a hand resting on the edge of the back seat cushion. A sharp intake of breath, almost a gasp. My head snapped around. Only empty upholstery met my gaze. The night outside was profoundly quiet, but inside my head, chaos reigned. Control felt terrifyingly distant. My breathing grew rapid, shallow, my chest constricted. Just get through it became my mantra. Just make it to the hotel. An hour later, the presence intensified, leaning closer than ever before. I braced myself, anticipating the chilling finality of a touch on my shoulder. My skin crawled. My thoughts scattered, grasping uselessly for explanations. None fit. I became aware of the dampness of my shirt, plastered to my back with cold sweat. The seatbelt felt like a tightening restraint, yet releasing it seemed unthinkable. Eyes locked forward, I fought the urge to blink, terrified of what might happen in that unguarded instant. I began whispering, a desperate, repetitive plea. "Go away, go away, go away." Reaching the hotel felt like surviving a shipwreck. Tremors racked my body. My head swam, my mouth was parched, tasting of dust and fear. I parked directly beneath the brightest light in the lot, snatched my luggage, and practically ran inside, nearly forgetting to lock the car in my haste. Sleep that night was a mere handful of hours, haunted by the lingering image of the silhouette. That trip solidified my resolve. This existence was unsustainable. Now, whenever feasible, my workday concludes with the setting sun. I meticulously map routes to preclude driving after dark. My colleagues perceive it as inflexibility, perhaps eccentricity. Their opinions matter little. I offer vague excuses, night vision issues, a preference for early rest, rather than confess the truth. Admitting I see something spectral occupying my back seat feels ludicrous, yet the experience is undeniable. The sensation, the chilling reality of it, is irrefutable. Something sits back there, watching me, regardless of impossibility. My nocturnal driving is now strictly curtailed. If unavoidable, I endeavor to have a companion. Notably, the silhouette has never appeared when another person shares the car, only in solitude. This detail only deepens the unease. I possess no understanding of its nature or origin. only the certainty that I cannot face it alone anymore. My nerves feel permanently abraded, my patience exhausted. Any night drive leaves a residue of fear that poisons sleep. Even recounting this now tightens a familiar knot in my stomach. The memory of that shape leaning close, impossibly close, sends a shiver down my spine. I've restructured my schedule, refusing assignments that necessitate late travel. It impacts my career prospects, undoubtedly, but the alternative is untenable. When pressed for reasons regarding my rigid scheduling, I deflect with vague talk of personal commitments. The truth remains unspoken. The sheer terror of being confined in that small space with that thing again. Every time darkness falls while I'm behind the wheel, every involuntary glance into the rearview mirror triggers a wave of primal dread. Functioning under that constant threat is impossible. Explaining it to anyone untouched by such an experience, equally so. I wish this account culminated in some revelation, some hard-won solution. It does not. I haven't banished the presence. I haven't deciphered its meaning. My only recourse is avoidance, denying it the opportunity to manifest. On the rare occasions I must drive late, the familiar fear rises, cold and suffocating. I find myself staring into the mirror, heart pounding, terrified of rediscovering the silhouette. Sometimes, a flicker at the edge of sight makes me squeeze my eyes shut, praying for normalcy upon reopening them. Other times, I simply fix my gaze forward, driving rigidly onward until I can pull over into light and safety. There I sit, breathing too fast, waiting for the frantic rhythm in my chest to subside. That is my reality. Call it madness, superstition, delusion. It changes nothing. I see a shape in my back seat when I drive alone at night. It leans close sometimes, as if on the verge of imparting some terrible secret. I hear no distinct words, only the faintest exhalation near my ear. And that is more than enough. It is why the night road, once a comfort, now holds only terror. That knock wasn't merely sound. It was a fracture in the night's deep stillness, arriving with chilling precision at 17 minutes past 3. The hour alone prickled unease, compounded by my solitude on the 14th floor of a fortress-like building. Yet it was the insistence, the frantic pulse beneath the wrapping, that solidified a terrifying conviction. The caller at my door transcended the human. My name is Alara. Until that rupture in the wee hours, existence had been a predictable rhythm. I sculpt worlds from light and shadow, a digital weaver lost in the loom of my monitor. This apartment, my eyrie suspended above the city's sprawl, had always been inviolate, a hermitage for contemplation and creation. Sleep had claimed me there again, slumped at my workstation, the computer's low thrum a lullaby against the screen's soft phosphorescence. The summons jolted me upright, my heart leaping against my ribs like a trapped bird. A phantom echo? I held my breath, then it came again, a heavier blow, demanding attention. I remained motionless, a statue carved from sudden fear, gaze locked on the sturdy oak separating me from the unknown. Who, in God's name? Logic scrambled for purchase, a neighbor needing aid, building maintenance confronting some catastrophe. Identify yourself, I projected, the words thin and reedy in the apartment's hush. Silence answered, thick and watchful. Then, A third impact, so forceful the door shuddered violently in its frame. I rose, limbs trembling, a puppet pulled by unseen strings. One instinct screamed retreat, burrow beneath covers, embrace childhood oblivion. But a stronger, more perilous curiosity drew me onward. Barefoot on the cool, polished floorboards, I drifted towards the threshold. My hand hovered near the latch, a visceral warning klaxon blaring deep within my gut. Danger. Profound danger. Instead of turning the knob, I pressed my eye to the peephole's distorted lens. The sight beyond stole the warmth from my blood. A figure occupied the corridor, impossibly tall, its crown grazing the overhead light fixture. It was draped in something dark, resembling a coat, yet the material writhed subtly, an oil-slick ripple defying conventional fabric. And the face. I recoiled, breath catching, pulse hammering a frantic tattoo against my sternum, where human features should have been arranged. Eyes, nose, mouth. There was only a smooth, pale, featureless expanse, an unnerving blankness, like polished marble or taut, unliving skin. As if detecting my scrutiny through the layers of wood and metal, the entity leaned forward, pressing its form against the door. A sound emanated from it then, a low, guttural vibration that seemed to thrum through the very structure of the building. Let me in. The thought wasn't heard, but felt, blooming inside my skull like a dark flower. I require entry. I stumbled back, shaking my head in mute negation, though aware it perceived me beyond sight. "No," I whispered, the sound barely escaping my constricted throat. "Leave, please, just leave." The assault on the door resumed, escalating into a furious battery. Each thud resonated through the walls, shaking pictures in their frames. "Let me in!" The voice inside my head swelled, urgent, imperious. "You must permit entry." My fingers fumbled for my phone, trembling too violently to dial the emergency number reliably. Glancing at the screen, despair plunged like an anchor. No service. Impossible. Signal here was perpetually flawless. The being outside seemed to taste my panic. Its next mental projection slithered down my spine, colder than ice. No one will intervene now, Elara. Only us. Let me in. Let me in. Let me in. The phrase became a horrifying mantra, cycling faster, louder, whipped into a frenzy. The wood around the lock began to shriek and splinter under the relentless onslaught. Turning, I fled to the bedroom, slamming the door and twisting the flimsy lock. With adrenaline-fueled strength, I shoved my heavy dresser against it. A gesture I knew, even then, was utterly symbolic. If that thing breached the main entrance, this fragile barrier was less than paper. The chanting ceased. A pregnant silence descended. Then, the unmistakable crack and roar of my apartment door, yielding, torn from its hinges. Heavy, measured footfalls echoed through the living space, each step deliberate, drawing inexorably nearer. I shrank into the farthest corner of the bedroom, squeezing my eyes shut against the inevitable. The footsteps halted just outside. I could hear it breathing, a ragged, wet, unnatural respiration that raised gooseflesh. "Elara," it whispered, the voice now undeniably within me, intimate and violating. "I have arrived. Will you not offer welcome?" My hands flew to my ears, a useless defense against an enemy already inside the gates. It was weaving through my thoughts, a parasitic suggestion attempting to usurp my will. "You wish to open the door, Ilara?" it crooned, seductive and terrifying. "Curiosity burns, does it not? Do you not yearn to truly see me, to comprehend what I am, what wonders I might reveal?" And the most horrifying truth, a treacherous sliver of my consciousness, did want to. A morbid fascination wrestled with primal terror. Against my volition, my body began to respond, my hand inching towards the doorknob. I fought the impulse with every shred of self, like battling a rip current intent on pulling me under. Just as my fingertips grazed the cool metal, a jarring sound sliced through the mental fog. The shrill, electronic scream of my alarm clock, 6 a.m. Impossibly, hours had condensed into perceived minutes. The entity unleashed a howl of pure frustration, a sound wave that vibrated the very air. And then, as abruptly as it manifested, the presence evaporated. The crushing weight lifted, leaving behind a fragile clarity. I remained huddled in that corner until the morning sun poured brazenly through the window, painting stripes of light across the floor. Only then did courage return, fragile but functional. My home was chaos. The front door hung askew, brutal gouges scarring its surface. Furniture lay toppled, artwork skewed or fallen, but of the visitor, no trace remained. I notified the authorities, the words feeling hollow and absurd even as I spoke them. How could I articulate the night's events in a way that wouldn't sound like delusion? Belief strained even within my own mind. In the ensuing days, I wrestled with the possibility of it being a hyper-realistic nightmare, a stress-induced hallucination. But the physical wreckage, the violated door, the disordered room, spoke a more tangible, terrifying truth. Within the week, I had abandoned that apartment, finding refuge on a ground floor with multiple escape routes. Salt now lines my thresholds. Iron charms hang above every portal. Whether these talismans hold any true power against such intrusions, I cannot say. But the ritual offers a sliver of perceived safety. Yet, genuine safety feels like a forgotten country. I know now that shadows harbor more than darkness, that things exist which rap upon doors in the heart of night, things that yearn for invitation, and sometimes, in the quietest, most vulnerable moments, a dreadful question surfaces. What if I had opened that door? What truths or horrors awaited? What transformation might have occurred? Mostly, I am relieved the question remains unanswered, but another part, buried deep, still flickers with that perilous curiosity. My greatest fear is that one day it might flare, consuming caution entirely. So, should you ever be startled from sleep by a knock, one that feels too pressing, too aware, heed this warning born of terror. Do not engage. Avert your gaze from the peephole, for once you witness what waits beyond, once its voice takes root in your mind, true escape becomes an illusion. It lingers, patient, and eventually it will find reason to knock again. It began down in the cellar's damp embrace, where forgotten things went to decay. Elias was wrestling with cardboard sarcophagi, dislodging relics of a life half-lived, when his flashlight beam snagged on something metallic, lurking behind a barricade of dust-furred crates. The unmistakable silhouette of a telephone emerged from the gloom. A heavy, archaic thing, cold to the touch, with a rotary dial like a sightless eye. He swiped at the accumulated grime with his shirt sleeve, revealing its bakelite shell. Though the cord appeared worryingly frayed, the instrument itself possessed a certain solid permanence, a suggestion it might yet function. An oddity, perhaps a conversation piece for the living room upstairs. Hoisting its unexpected weight, Elias carried it into the brighter air above, placing it on a slight mahogany end table beside the worn sofa. The wall jack accepted the plug, albeit with a loose, uncertain click. That first night, sleep was a shallow pool Elias drifted in, the basement's musty breath still clinging to his lungs, despite the cleaner air upstairs. Exhaustion from excavating the past weighed heavy. Then, sometime in the abyss before dawn, perhaps 3 o'clock, a sound pierced the quiet. A ringing, sharp, insistent, a curt buzz repeating with unnerving regularity. Elias surfaced, sitting bolt upright in the darkness. It was the old telephone. He stood, hesitant, the silence of the hallway amplifying the alien summons. Bare feet padding on cool wood, he navigated to the living room, flicked the switch, bathing the scene in sudden light. He approached the phone, lifted the dense handset. Silence, his own held breath loud in his ears. Waiting, listening. A noise materialized on the line, indistinct yet intimate. Breathing, slow, measured, utterly calm. No words, no hiss of static, just the deliberate cadence of inhalation and exhalation. Utterly nonsensical. He tried to speak, his voice emerging as a rough whisper. "Hello?" Only the breathing answered, steady, unchanged. "Who is this?" Elias demanded, finding a little more volume. Still nothing but that rhythmic respiration. 15 seconds might have passed, an eternity measured in heartbeats, before he replaced the receiver and glanced at the wall clock. Just past 3. The following day was an exercise in denial. Elias went through the motions: work, dinner, the flickering blue light of the television, deliberately keeping the phone in his peripheral vision. He debated disconnecting it, yanking the cord free, but a morbid curiosity stayed his hand. Perhaps faulty wiring, crossed signals, some mundane explanation. That night, punctually, it rang again. Same abrasive summons, same dead hour. He answered. The breathing returned, its pace unaltered. Louder this time, firmer, Elias challenged the silence. "Hey, who are you?" Emptiness replied. "Talk to me," he pleaded. Nothing. He slammed the handset down, heart hammering against his ribs. A quick check confirmed his suspicion. Lifting the receiver again yielded only dead air. No dial tone, nothing. On the third night, vigilance replaced sleep. Elias became a sentry in his own living room, chair pulled close, lights extinguished. He watched the phone, a squat, unattractive relic. Its rotary numbers were ghosts, faded by countless turns. Nothing seemed overtly sinister about its physical form. He focused on keeping his own breathing even, and then, as if summoned by the clock striking some unseen hour, it rang. He snatched the receiver mid-ring. The breathing was there, a familiar yet terrifying presence. But this time, after a few moments, it shifted. A low susurrus crept through the line, fragmented whispers that defied comprehension. Short, meaningless phrases uttered in a hushed tone, nearly consumed by the sound of respiration. "What do you want?" Elias asked, his voice tight. The whispering ceased instantly, replaced once more by that slow, deliberate breathing. He hung up, a knot tightening in his chest, his mouth suddenly arid. Sleep became an impossibility. The urge to disconnect the thing was overwhelming. Rising from his restless bed, Elias crossed to the phone, pulled the cord from the wall jack. It slid out with unnerving ease. He inspected the connection, finding nothing amiss. Then, carrying the heavy object like a captured demon, he descended back into the cellar's gloom and deposited it in a far corner. Upstairs, he sought refuge in bed, managing a few fractured hours of sleep before jolting awake near 5. A pervasive anxiety gnawed at him. He went downstairs, needing to confirm normalcy. The corner in the basement where he'd left the phone was empty. A frantic search ensued. Behind shelves, inside boxes, the storage room yielded nothing. It was gone. He tried to rationalize, convinced he'd simply misplaced it in his exhaustion. Then he went back upstairs, to the living room. There it sat, precisely where it had been before, silent and accusing on the end table. The next night, inevitably, it rang. Elias had found it plugged back in upon its reappearance, and hadn't dared disconnect it again, feeling a creeping loss of control. Lifting the receiver, he was met by the unintelligible whispering. Random syllables, fractured syntax, utter nonsense. He tried to interrupt, his voice rising. "Stop calling me." "Who are you? Leave me alone." The sibilant murmuring persisted, unperturbed. But after he shouted, "Stop," he thought he detected something new. Movement on the other end. Faint scuffling like footsteps on a wooden floor. Then, distinctly, the sound of a door opening and closing. He held his breath, listening intently, before finally hanging up. Night after night, the ritual repeated. The phone would shriek into life at some ungodly hour. Elias would answer, greeted by either the unnerving breathing or the stream of senseless whispers. Sometimes, new sounds bled through, distant footsteps pacing, the groan of ancient hinges, even a muffled, choked sobbing. He couldn't pinpoint their origin, couldn't decipher their meaning. Each call left his skin crawling. Sleep became a forgotten luxury, replaced by prolonged, anxious wakefulness. Daytime hours blurred into a haze of fatigue. His appetite dwindled. He experimented with ignoring the calls, letting the phone ring itself out. It was futile. The ringing persisted, relentless, until he answered. If ignored, it fell silent only to resume precisely 10 minutes later. He timed it once, a desperate act in the face of the absurd. Every 10 minutes, it would ring, again and again, until he capitulated. The reward? That same disembodied breathing, that same cascade of meaningless whispers. He tried unplugging it again, yanked the cord, coiled it tightly around the phone's base, and secreted the entire apparatus in a hall closet, turning the key in the lock. He retreated to bed, seeking oblivion. Then, the ringing started. Bolting upright, Elias flooded the house with light. The sound emanated unmistakably from the living room. He unlocked the closet. Empty. The phone sat serenely on its end table, plugged in, waiting. He tried to push down the rising tide of impossibility, simply answering the call, enduring the familiar nonsense, hanging up. Cold sweat traced patterns down his back. Destruction seemed the next logical step. Elias fetched a hammer, swung it hard against the phone's casing. Instead of shattering, the hammer rebounded with a dull, unsatisfying thud. He struck again, harder. No effect. A screwdriver proved useless. The screws refused to yield. pliers slipped, unable to gain purchase. The phone remained stubbornly intact, mocking his efforts. Frustration boiled over into rage. He cursed the inert object, screamed incoherent threats into the handset. The response was always the same: breathing, whispering, utterly indifferent. He considered disposal. One night, he carried it outside, thrust it into the cold embrace of a metal trash can, slammed the lid shut. Back inside, doors locked, he checked the living room. It was there, same position on the end table. A crushing weight settled in his chest, his throat constricting. By now, Elias's nights were fractured nightmares. He'd jerk awake hourly, anticipating the shrill summons. Sometimes it waited until 2, sometimes 3, occasionally shattering the silence at 1. Predictability was another casualty. The chronic sleep deprivation manifested as a persistent headache, burning eyes, a constant tremor in his hands. He felt perpetually weak, fragile. Cotton stuffed in his ears offered no barrier. The ringing seemed to bore directly into his skull. Blasting music through headphones was equally ineffective. The insistent buzz bled through the loudest passages. Leaving the house offered no escape. He'd return to find the phone ringing patiently. He wondered briefly if he was imagining it, if anyone else could hear. He cautiously asked his neighbor, Mr. Henderson, about late-night phone sounds. The man looked at him blankly. No, nothing. Elias didn't ask again. What was the point? During one particularly grueling pre-dawn vigil, adrift in a sea of exhaustion near 4, Elias lifted the receiver with a desperate resolve. He would understand. He pressed the handset hard against his ear, straining to decipher the low, rapid, broken susurrus. He focused, trying to isolate a single coherent phrase, a recognizable word. It was like listening to static resolve into meaning, only it never did. The voice, or voices, it was impossible to tell if it was male or female, singular or plural, perhaps a terrifying amalgam of both, maintained a low, affectless monotone. Layered beneath it, almost subliminal, were faint gasps, soft, stifled moans. He listened for a full minute, the sounds washing over him, before whispering, "What do you want?" He fought to keep his voice even. The whispers flowed on, uninterrupted. "Stop calling me." No change. "I'm going to unplug you." For a single, heart-stopping second, the whispers ceased. Then they resumed, as if drawing breath. Elias slammed the handset down, his pulse frantic. He paced the incandescent living room, a prisoner under his own harsh lights, gulped water straight from the kitchen tap, the coolness doing nothing to quell the internal fire. He tried the guest room, hoping distance might muffle the sound, grant some respite. It made no difference. The phone's ring permeated every wall, every floorboard, vibrating through the pillows crushed against his ears. Once, in desperation, he fled to his car, drove a few blocks, parked beneath the lonely orange glow of a streetlight, reclined the seat. Minutes ticked by in blessed silence. Then, faint at first, a phantom ringing began in his ears. He tried to dismiss it as auditory hallucination, a product of stress. But it grew louder, more insistent. He started the engine, circled the block, the ringing now a clear, undeniable presence inside his head. Defeated, he returned home. The phone sat silent on the end table, waiting. Later, inevitably, it rang. He answered. The whispering seemed louder now, more urgent, and beneath it, The distinct sounds of footsteps, doors opening and closing, methodical, as if someone were moving through rooms nearby, searching. A glacial chill prickled his arms. He hung up quickly. He experimented with relocation within the house, placed the phone in the bathroom, tucked behind the toilet. It rang there too. Elias answered it, standing on the cold tile, the whispers echoing slightly in the small space. A dull thump sounded in the background, like something heavy dropped onto a table. He hung up, fled the bathroom. Upon returning to the living room, the phone was back in its accustomed place on the end table. Removing the cord became a pointless ritual. It always reconnected itself. Nighttime illumination became permanent. Elias kept every light in the house blazing, needing to banish shadows, to see everything. Sleep, already elusive, became nearly impossible in the constant glare, but darkness felt infinitely more threatening. He'd sit on the sofa, watching the phone, forcing down processed snacks to stay awake, his stomach churning with acid and anxiety. His hands shook when he reached for a glass of water. His temper frayed, erupting in sudden bursts of anger directed at the silent, waiting phone. He started snatching the receiver before the second ring, shouting into the plastic void. The whispering never altered its cadence, never acknowledged his fury. Thoughts of seeking help surfaced, only to founder on the rocks of absurdity. A phone company technician? What could Elias possibly say? There's a haunted phone, it whispers nonsense, it won't let me sleep, and it teleports. He had no proof. The phone bore no brand, no identifying marks. Its cord was ancient, the wall jack unremarkable. His own cell phone worked perfectly. This archaic intruder existed in its own pocket of reality. The calls varied subtly. Sometimes the whispering would pause, leaving only the sound of that steady, unnervingly calm breathing. Other times, muffled crying replaced the whispers. Adult sobs, choked back, laden with despair. The footsteps always remained distant, elusive. He tried varying his greetings, different tones, different questions, hoping to provoke any kind of reaction. Nothing. He tried letting the whispers drone on for minutes at a time, testing their endurance. They never stopped, just continued their meaningless litany until he couldn't bear it anymore, hanging up as his ear throbbed from pressing the receiver too tightly. He bought industrial-grade earplugs. The ringtone sliced through them. He tried noise-canceling headphones blasting static. The ringing persisted beneath the hiss, and whenever he answered, the whispers continued, serenely disconnected from any sound Elias made in his own world. Holding his cell phone to the receiver to record the calls yielded only silence upon playback, nothing but the sound of his own ragged breathing. His days dissolved into a gray fog of exhaustion. Work suffered, his health frayed. The sheer helplessness was corrosive. The phone was immutable. It wouldn't break, couldn't be discarded, refused to fall silent. He lost count of the nights, stopped tracking the hours. It was always late, always oppressive. His eyes burned perpetually. His head throbbed with a low, constant ache. The weakness deepened, the shaking worsened. Stuffed cotton, loud television, fleeing the house. Nothing worked. The neighbor, Mr. Henderson, remained oblivious. Asking again felt utterly pointless. The isolation was absolute. This torment was his alone. My headlamp's blade sliced the absolute dark, revealing a throat of rock plunging seemingly without end into the planet's depths. Air, thick as velvet, hung heavy with powdered stone and the stale breath of secrets left to molder. I drew a ragged inhale, attempting to leash the frantic drumming in my chest. This was the place whispered about in local lore, the phantom copper lode, untouched by human hands for more than 100 years. We stood at its threshold, but as the encroaching blackness would soon teach me, some places remain hidden for terrifyingly good reasons. "Kyle, are you truly certain?" Ilara's query ricocheted from the stone confines, a nervous counterpoint to the subterranean silence, laced with both thrill and trepidation. I pivoted, my light sweeping across my companions. Ilara, Reese, Mara, their faces starkly illuminated and dusted with the omnipresent grime, were masks of apprehension. "Friends," I began, forcing a buoyancy I didn't entirely feel. "We've dreamt of this, planned this passage for months. Turning back now, unthinkable." The truth coiled colder in my gut. I was as unnerved as they. We were seasoned trekkers, yes, but novices in the art of delving beneath the earth. This forgotten shaft, veiled by a curtain of tenacious greenery, and absent from every chart we possessed, was a discovery born of sheer, blind chance, or perhaps a darker ordinance of fate. Reese, ever the pragmatist, stepped into the light circle. "I'm not convinced, Kyle. The structure feels precarious. Shouldn't we report this? Let the experts manage it?" A sharp shake of my head. "And cede the glory? Never. We unearthed this vein of history. The first exploration belongs to us." Mara, typically the most circumspect among us, surprised me with a decisive nod. "Kale speaks sense. An opportunity like this, it won't come again. I vote we proceed." Ilara's uncertainty lingered in her gaze, but after a beat, her shoulders set with resolve. "Agreed, but we stay tethered, understand? No solo ventures into the unknown." With the pact sealed, our descent commenced. The tunnel angled downwards, a gullet lined with ancient timber supports that groaned like arthritic bones under the mountain's weight as we disturbed their slumber. Our headlamps threw elongated, skittering specters onto the walls, phantoms mocking our trespass into this time-locked sanctum. Deeper we pressed, and the mine began surrendering its ghosts. Rusted pickheads and shovel blades lay discarded like fallen warriors. Here and there, the skeletal remains of ore carts sat frozen, their wheels seized by a century of stillness. "Astounding!" Mara breathed, her historian soul drinking in the tableau. "It's like the past holding its breath." I couldn't deny it. Despite the suffocating dark and a persistent internal hum warning us away, a current of pure discovery surged through me. We were the first souls in generations to witness these relics. Perhaps an hour into our subterranean trek, the passage bifurcated, presenting two identical maws of darkness, offering no hint of their destinations. "Which path?" Ilara asked, her beam probing first left, then right. I unfolded the brittle map, retrieved from the town's dusty archives. Its surface was a palimpsest of faded ink and tears, barely decipherable, yet our only guide. After a moment's scrutiny, my finger traced a line towards the left-hand tunnel. This route, if this cartography holds true, it should deliver us to the primary excavation chamber. We pushed onward, the tunnel constricted, the air growing denser, dust motes dancing thickly in our beams. The silence became a pressure against the ears, punctuated only by our shuffling boots and the sporadic, unnerving drip of unseen water. Abruptly, Rhys halted, causing Mara to collide softly with his back. "Did you hear that?" His voice was a strained whisper. We froze, straining to perceive anything beyond our own frantic pulses. Silence reigned for a heart-stopping moment. Then, I caught it. A low, guttural vibration, like thunder trapped miles below. "Likely just air currents through the shafts," I offered, the reassurance aimed as much at myself as them. "Let's keep moving. We must be close." But the rumbling wasn't transient. It swelled as we advanced, a deep-seated growl from the mountain's core. Small stones began to jitter nervously across the floor, a fine powder sifted down from the unseen ceiling. "Kyle!" Elara's voice was taut, strung with rising fear. "I strongly believe we need to retreat." I was on the verge of conceding when the narrow passage suddenly disgorged us into a cavernous void. Our lights were swallowed, unable to find purchase on the distant walls or the impossibly high roof. It felt like standing on the precipice of nothingness. "This is it," I exhaled, awe-struck. "The heart of the mine." As our vision adapted, shapes began to coalesce from the gloom. Colossal, rust-eaten machinery squatted like dormant behemoths. Mounds of scree and rubble formed an alien topography. And then, catching my beam with a seductive gleam, a rich vein of copper streaking through the rock face like frozen lightning. We'd found it. The legendary mother lode that had haunted prospectors' dreams for decades. Our elation was brutally brief. The subterranean rumbling, which had subsided to a background thrum, abruptly escalated. The very ground beneath us began to shudder violently. "Cave in!" Rhys roared, but a colder dread gripped me. This wasn't merely seismic activity, it was the mine itself, weakened by time, neglect, and now our fatal intrusion, finally surrendering to the immense pressure from above. It was coming down. "Run!" The word tore from my throat as I spun back towards the tunnel entrance. We scrambled, fleeing the expanding roar that now filled the cavern, growing into a deafening cataclysm. Stones rained down, pebbles at first, then fist-sized chunks, then larger boulders. I heard Mara cry out, a sharp sound of pain as something struck her shoulder. But there was no stopping. The return path seemed impossibly elongated, twisting in ways I didn't recall. Had we blundered onto a different artery in our haste? Dust choked the air, reducing our headlamp's effectiveness to near zero, creating a blinding, disorienting strobe as we ran for our lives. A particularly savage tremor threw us from our feet. Scrabbling in the churning darkness, a wave of horror washed over me. I couldn't see the others. "Elara! Rhys! Mara!" My voice was a raw rasp against the dust and din. "Here!" Elara's reply was faint, muffled. Guiding myself with a hand braced against the vibrating wall, I stumbled towards the sound. I found her helping Mara upright. Mara's face was a mess of tears and grime, her arm clutched tightly to her chest. "Where's Reese?" The question felt like lead on my tongue. Ilara shook her head, her eyes vast with terror. "Lost him. When we went down, we were separated." Another violent shudder racked the tunnel, bringing down a fresh hail of rock. We couldn't linger. "Reese!" I bellowed one last, desperate time, straining to hear any response above the mine's death throes. Silence, save for the grinding rock. My heart felt like stone. I seized Ilara's hand. "We must go! Now!" We ran, half-blinded, through the disintegrating passage. Each footfall was a gamble, each intensifying rumble a potential prelude to being buried alive. Just as my lungs burned and legs threatened to buckle, I saw it. A pale, distant glimmer. Daylight. The exit. Summoning a final, desperate reserve of strength, we lunged towards it. Rocks cascaded around us. The entire mountain seemed to groan in agony. We burst from the tunnel's mouth into the open air and didn't stop, running until the trembling earth felt solid beneath our feet, well clear of the entrance. Turning, we watched in stunned horror as the hillside before us seemed to ripple, then buckle inwards, imploding with a monstrous sigh that sent a colossal plume of dust billowing towards the sky. We stood there, sucking ragged breaths, coated in filth and bleeding from countless minor lacerations, alive but fractured, hollowed by shock. "Reese," Mara wept, cradling her injured arm. "He's still inside." The brutal weight of our ordeal settled upon us. 4 adventurers, alight with the thrill of discovery, had entered that portal. 3 survivors, bruised and broken, now stood witness to its violent sealing. As the dust slowly began to settle, a sound sliced through the aftermath, arresting our grief. A choked cough emanating from the vicinity of the collapsed mine entrance. Hope, sharp and painful, surged. We scrambled back towards the debris, scarcely daring to believe. And there, miraculously emerging from beneath a fallen skeletal tree that must have offered some fragile shield, was Reese. He was caked in dust, blood streaming from a gash on his forehead, but unmistakably, astonishingly alive. We converged, helping him stagger to his feet, the relief so immense it stole our words. We had clawed our way back from the brink. The mine, however, with its buried wealth and untold histories, was now more lost than ever, entombed beneath countless tons of rock and earth. As we began the slow, aching journey back towards the world of the living, my thoughts drifted to the forgotten miners who had walked these tunnels before us. How many had been claimed by this mountain's insatiable hunger? How many had glimpsed that same fatal glimmer of copper, pushed deeper into the unstable dark, only to be swallowed whole by the indifferent earth? We had been granted passage, albeit scarred. We had survived, but the passage had exacted a price. We ventured into the dark seeking adventure, perhaps fortune, and unearthed instead a brutal lesson in the crushing power of the natural world and the fragile spark of our own existence. The lost copper mine would guard its secrets, buried now beyond any hope of retrieval. And we, the interlopers who had dared to awaken its slumber, would forever carry the tremor of that darkness within us. Some treasures, we now understood with chilling certainty, are meant to remain undisturbed. His thumb, a pale hook snagged on the edge of encroaching night, was a signal I should have ignored. An instinct, primal and sharp, screamed to keep the engine humming, to let the asphalt spool endlessly beneath me. Yet the silhouette it belonged to, shoulders bowed under an unseen weight, a posture steeped in weary surrender, resonated. I recognized that specific brand of isolation, the desperate hope for a flicker of human kindness on a desolate stretch. My foot eased off the accelerator. The beams of my car sliced the gloom, pinning a man against the dark backdrop, his backpack scuffed, his face lifting into a smile that seemed unearthed, grateful. Destination? The query slipped through the narrow gap I allowed in the window, my voice thin against the vast quiet. Just the next town, Providence Falls, if the road takes you that way, he offered, his tone like worn leather, rough but somehow comforting. Folks call me Silas. A flicker of apprehension, fueled by years of cautionary tales, made me pause. The hour was late, the highway a ribbon of emptiness unwinding through nowhere, and Providence Falls lay a mere 30 miles distant. A negligible risk, perhaps? "Climb aboard, Silas," I conceded, the electronic click of the lock echoing too loudly. "I'm Ilara." He slid into the passenger seat, bringing with him the faint, acrid tang of stale tobacco and a deeper scent, loamy and cool, like disturbed earth after rain. Closer now, Silas appeared older than the shadows had suggested, perhaps cresting his late 50s. Time had etched deep paths around his eyes, and his beard, a tapestry of gray and black, hinted at neglect. "Obliged for the stop," he murmured, the seatbelt clasping shut with a decisive snap. "Doesn't happen much anymore." A faint smile touched my lips as I merged back onto the blacktop. I know the feeling. Been stranded myself. It's a lonely place to be. Conversation flowed unexpectedly easily as the mile markers dissolved behind us. Silas spoke of carpentry, of heading towards a promised job. I offered fragments of my own story. A teacher returning from a visit to my sister. A fragile connection formed, a shared bubble of warmth against the immense, indifferent night. But then, imperceptibly at first, the atmosphere inside the car began to curdle. A subtle modulation in Silas's voice, a flinty quality surfacing in his gaze. I tried to dismiss the prickling unease coiling in my gut as fatigue, imagination. "So, Ilara," Silas began again, his voice now possessing a serrated edge I hadn't registered before. "Make a habit of this, picking up shadows on empty highways." A nervous laugh escaped me, my grip tightening instinctively on the wheel. "Hardly, just, like I mentioned, I know what it's like." He nodded, a slow, deliberate motion, his eyes fixed unwavering on my profile. "My good fortune, then." The ensuing silence pressed in, thick and suffocating. The darkness outside seemed to lean against the glass, shrinking the small space, amplifying the beat of my own heart. I found my gaze darting to the GPS display with increasing frequency, silently urging the distance to collapse faster. "Thing is," Silas said, his sudden utterance making me flinch, "I've had my eye on you for some time." A glacial chill traced its way down my spine. "What are you talking about?" His chuckle was a dry, rasping sound devoid of humor, scraping against my nerves. "Oh, don't play naive, Elara. You didn't really think our meeting tonight was some happy accident, did you?" My thoughts fractured, scrambling to assemble his words into something comprehensible. Followed me? How? Why? I fought to keep my voice level, a trembling thread against the rising panic. "I believe you're mistaken, Silas. We've only just met." "Have we?" He shifted, turning fully towards me in the seat. The dashboard lights cast his eyes into hollow pools of blackness. "I know quite a bit about you, Elara. Know about that little blue house you keep on Sycamore Lane. Know you've got a cat named Jasper. Know you pull out of the driveway at 7:15 each morning." Terror seized me, cold and absolute, as the calculated nature of his presence became horrifyingly clear. This wasn't chance. This was orchestrated. My foot instinctively pressed down, the engine's pitch rising to a strained whine. "What is it you want?" The question was barely a breath, fragile in the charged air. Silas's hand shot out, fingers clamping around my forearm with startling, wiry strength. "I want you to pull this car over." "No!" I choked out, attempting to wrench my arm free without losing control of the wheel. "I'm not stopping." His grip became a vice. "Pull over right now, Elara, or I swear I'll take this wheel myself and send us both into the trees." The chilling certainty in his voice told me he wasn't bluffing. Tremors ran through my hands as I guided the car onto the rough shoulder, the sound of gravel spitting beneath the tires marking our halt. My mind raced, frantically searching for an escape. Miles from anywhere. No headlights approaching. My phone lay uselessly in my purse on the back seat. The instant the car stilled, Silas reached into his coat. My breath hitched, my heart slamming against my ribs, as moonlight caught the lethal gleam of polished steel. A knife. "All right," he stated, his voice unnervingly placid now, the calm before a devastating storm. "Time to trade places. You're going to be very quiet while I drive us someplace. Less public." A wave of raw panic crested. If he took the wheel, if he drove me away from this road, it was over. In that stark moment, something primal ignited. Without conscious thought, I slammed the gear shift into drive and stomped the accelerator. The car lurched violently forward, throwing Silas off balance. Seizing that instant, I drove my elbow backward with every ounce of strength I possessed, connecting solidly with his face. A wet, sickening crunch echoed in the small space, followed by a guttural howl of agony. His hold on the knife faltered. My chance. My hand scrabbled for the weapon, fingers closing around the cool handle just as he recovered, lunging towards me. The car careened wildly as we struggled, a frantic, desperate ballet of survival. A searing pain slashed across my forearm, but the flood of adrenaline numbed it almost instantly. Fueled by a strength I never knew I harbored, I shoved him bodily against the passenger door. "Get out!" I shrieked, the knife now held unsteadily before me. "Get out of my car!" Our eyes locked for a fraught second. His were filled with incandescent rage, but beneath it, I saw a flicker of something else. Surprise, maybe even fear. He hadn't anticipated resistance. With a sudden, fluid movement, he fumbled for the door handle and spilled out into the darkness. A heavy thud, a muffled curse swallowed by the night. I didn't brake. I didn't look back. I just drove, propelled by a terror so profound, my heart felt ready to detonate within my chest. Only when the distant, hazy glow of Providence Falls materialized on the horizon did I allow myself a ragged gasp of air. My hands shook uncontrollably, making the steering wheel tremble. The moment I crossed the town line, I swerved into the first island of light I saw, the brightly lit parking lot of a 24-hour diner, a few semi-trucks hulking like sleeping beasts. I practically fell from the driver's seat, stumbling towards the welcoming glass doors. A trucker, climbing down from his cab, saw my approach and hurried over, his face etched with concern. "Lord Almighty, miss, you okay?" he asked, his large hand steadying my swaying form. I glanced down, truly seeing myself for the first time. Blood stained my shirt, whose I couldn't be sure. A dark, wet track marked my forearm where the blade had grazed me. "Need help," I managed, the words thick on my tongue, before my legs finally buckled. The next hours unfolded in a disorienting sequence of flashing lights, hushed questions, and the sterile scent of antiseptic. Police arrived, statements were painstakingly extracted, my arm was cleaned and bandaged. Patrol cars were dispatched back down the highway, but they found only Silas's worn backpack, discarded by the roadside where he'd exited the car so abruptly. No sign of the man himself. Later, huddled in a scratchy blanket at the police station, the enormity of the night began to seep into my bones. The officer assigned to my case, a man with tired eyes and a somber expression, sat opposite me. "Miss Vance," he began gently, "I realize how upsetting this is, but I need to ask, have you noticed anyone unusual lately? Any unfamiliar vehicles near your home? Anyone loitering near your work?" I shook my head, a profound numbness settling over me. No, nothing like that. I'd never seen him before tonight. He made a note on his pad, his mouth set in a grim line. "We'll increase patrols around your residence, naturally, but I'd strongly advise staying with family or a friend for the immediate future. Maybe vary your schedule a bit, just as a precaution." Leaving the station, the first pale streaks of dawn were painting the eastern sky. I felt utterly hollowed out, scoured clean by terror and exertion. Yet, beneath the crushing weight of fatigue, a small, hot ember of fury began to glow. This man, this Silas, had deliberately shattered my sense of safety, had marked me, and now expected me to dissolve into fear. A part of me screamed to flee, sell the little blue house, vanish. But another part, stronger, harder, forged in the crucible of the last few hours, refused to be routed. I drove to my sister's house, knuckles bleached white on the steering wheel the entire journey. Pulling into her familiar driveway, a decision crystallized within me. I would not be defined by his malice. I would be cautious, yes, vigilant, but I would not surrender my life to the shadow he cast. In the weeks that followed, security cameras sprouted like metallic fungi around my house. I learned the sharp, practical geometry of self-defense. My routines shifted, became less predictable, but I remained in my home. I continued teaching. I reclaimed the rhythm of my days. Each night the locks click twice under my hand. Each morning, my eyes sweep the quiet street before I step outside. And always, I carry the chilling knowledge of what happened and the startling discovery of my own resilience. Silas remains a phantom somewhere out there. The thought still sends a shiver through me, a cold reminder. But the woman who stopped on that dark highway is gone, consumed in the struggle. The woman who remains, she is alert, and she is watching too.